The dying sun of Calith Prime cast long shadows across the empty streets. Vareth stood at the window of the High Council chamber, watching smoke rise from the Eastern District. 3 days ago, that district had been full of life. Now it was silent, consumed by the creatures humanity would soon come to know as the Kryn Swarm. Vareth was old by his people's standards. His skin, once bright with the luminescence of youth, had faded to a dull gray. But it was not age that dimmed his light now. It was fear. Behind him, the other council members argued in hushed, desperate voices. They had been arguing for weeks, months, years, and still the swarm came. The Calathi had tried everything. They built better shields. The swarm broke through them. They created new weapons. The swarm adapted. They called for help from their neighbors, the Zenthi Collective. The Zenthi had sent 2 fleets. Both were destroyed. The swarm consumed them, ship by ship, adding their biomass to its endless hunger now. 15 of the Calathi's 20 colony worlds were gone. 5 remained, and the swarm was closing in on Calith Prime itself. Vareth could see their ships in the night sky sometimes, dark shapes that blotted out the stars. Living ships. Ships made of flesh and bone and hunger. "We must evacuate," Councilmember Sareth said. Her voice was steady, but Vareth could see the tremor in her hands. "Take what ships we have left and flee to the Outer Rim. Perhaps we can find sanctuary there." "There is no sanctuary," another council member replied. His name was Kethrin, and he had lost his entire family when the swarm took the 4th colony world. The swarm does not stop. It does not rest. It will follow us to the edge of the galaxy if it must. "Then what do you suggest?" Sareth's voice cracked. "That we simply wait here to die?" The chamber fell silent. No one had an answer. The Calathi were a peaceful people. They had been peaceful for 3,000 years. They knew science, art, philosophy. They did not know war. Not real war. Not the kind of war that was required to stop something like the swarm. Vareth turned from the window. "There's one option we have not tried." Council members looked at him. Some with hope, others with confusion. "We pray," Vareth said. Kethrin stood up, anger flashing across his face. "Pray? We are a rational people, Vareth. We abandoned superstitions centuries ago. There are no gods to hear us." "I did not say we pray to gods," Vareth replied calmly. "I said we pray. We send a message into the void. A call for help. Not to deities, but to anyone who might hear. Any species? Any civilization that might have the power to stop what we cannot? That is madness," Kethrin said. "What species would help us?" "The Zenthi tried and failed. The other races of this sector are too weak or too far away. There is no one." "Then we die," Vareth said simply. "But I would rather die knowing we tried everything, even the impossible." The vote was close, but in the end, desperation won. The Calathi prepared their message. It took 3 days to write. They encoded it in mathematics, the universal language. They poured into it everything they were: their history, their culture, their fear, their hope, and most of all, their desperate plea for salvation. They called it a prayer because that was what it felt like. A message sent into darkness, hoping for an answer. Hoping for angels, the message was transmitted from the last working communications array on Calith Prime. It went out in all directions, traveling at the speed of light, carrying with it the dying wish of an entire species. Across the galaxy, in a small monitoring station orbiting a blue planet called Earth, Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison was 3 hours into his shift when the signal arrived. At first, he thought it was a malfunction. The computers were screaming alerts. Every sensor array was lighting up. The signal was powerful, more powerful than anything he had seen in his 5 years at the station. Jake ran the initial analysis. The signal was artificial, definitely alien, and it was complex, really complex. He forwarded it immediately to command, then started working on the translation. The math was easy enough to decode. What came after made his blood run cold. It was a distress call. A civilization was dying. They were being hunted, consumed by something they called the swarm. They had tried to fight. They had failed. Now they were begging. Begging anyone who could hear them to help. Jake read the message 3 times. Then he looked out the window of the station at Earth below with its cities of light and vast oceans. He thought about the wars humanity had fought. The terrible, brutal wars. The ones they taught in history classes as warnings, as examples of what never to do again. And he wondered if maybe, just maybe, all that violence had been preparing humanity for something. The message reached Earth's military command within an hour. Admiral Patricia Kane read it in her office on Luna Base. She was a hard woman. 40 years in the service had made her that way. She had fought in the Mars Rebellion. She had commanded ships during the Belt Wars. She had seen things that would break softer people. But as she read the Kalathi message, something stirred in her chest. Something she thought she had lost long ago. It might have been pity. It might have been anger. Or it might have been the simple human instinct to help someone who was hurting. She called an emergency meeting of the United Earth Coalition. Representatives from every nation, every faction, every political group gathered in the council chamber. They read the message. They looked at the star charts showing where it came from. They calculated the distance, the resources required, the risks involved, then they voted. It took 4 hours of debate. But in the end, the vote was unanimous. Humanity would answer the call. Admiral Kane gave the order. The UEC fleet would deploy. They would travel to Kalathi space. They would face this swarm, and they would do what humans had always done when faced with an enemy that would not stop. They would fight until one side was destroyed. Captain Victor Hayes received his orders aboard the warship Vindication. He was a tall man with gray in his hair and scars on his hands. He had been a soldier since he was 18. Now he was 53, and he knew more about war than he had ever wanted to. He called his senior officers to the briefing room. Lisa Grant, his chief engineer, arrived first. She was young, brilliant, and had designed half the weapon systems on the ship. Danny Cruz, his best pilot, came next. He was cocky and loud, but he could fly anything and had never lost a dogfight. Then came Kyle Murphy, the Marine sergeant. He was a mountain of a man with cold eyes and a reputation for getting his people home alive. Victor showed them the message. He explained the situation. Then he looked at each of them in turn. "This is not a rescue mission," he said. "This is war. We are going to fight something we have never seen before. Something that has already destroyed multiple civilizations. Some of us will not come home." Lisa nodded slowly. Danny grinned, like this was the best news he had heard all year. Kyle just grunted. "When do we leave?" Kyle asked. 48 hours, Victor replied. "We prep the ship, load supplies, and brief the crew. Then we jump to Kalathi space and see what we are dealing with." The meeting broke up. The officers went to prepare their departments. Victor stayed in the briefing room looking at the translated message on the screen. The Kalathi had prayed for angels, for divine intervention, for merciful protectors. Victor smiled grimly. He had been called many things in his life. A soldier, a killer, a necessary evil, but never an angel. The Kalathi were about to learn that humanity was far from angelic. But right now, demons were exactly what they needed. The human fleet came out of slipspace like sharks emerging from dark water. 27 warships materialized at the edge of Kalathi territory, their weapons already charged, their crews at battle stations. Captain Victor Hayes stood on the bridge of the Vindication, staring at the displays that showed what remained of the Kalathi civilization. It was worse than the message had suggested. Much worse. The first colony world they passed was just a shell. The scanners showed no life signs. The surface was covered in something organic, something that pulsed and breathed. The cities were gone, consumed. The forests were gone. Even the oceans had been drained. What remained was just a massive living thing that had eaten an entire planet. "Mother of God," Lisa Grant whispered from her engineering station. She had seen a lot in her career, but nothing like this. Victor's jaw tightened. "Get me everything the scanners can pick up. I want to know what we are dealing with. The data came in over the next hour. The swarm was not like any enemy humanity had faced before. The ships were biological. They grew instead of being built. They healed damage. They adapted to weapons. And they were everywhere. Hundreds of ships, maybe thousands, moving through Kalathi space like a plague. Danny Cruz pulled up the tactical display. Captain, we are seriously outnumbered here. Those swarm ships outnumber us at least 30-1, noted Victor said calmly. But numbers are not everything. Lisa, what do we know about their biology? Lisa worked her console, pulling up the analysis the computers had been running. They are carbon-based, similar to Earth organisms. They use something like DNA, but much more complex. Their ships are actually single organisms or colonies of organisms working together. They are vulnerable to extreme heat, extreme cold, and certain types of radiation, good Victor said. That gives us options. Kyle, prepare your Marines for boarding actions. We need to capture some of these creatures intact so we can study them.
Al Murphy nodded.
Yes, sir. My boys will bring you some samples. The communication system beeped. A message was coming in from Calith Prime. Victor accepted it, and the screen filled with the image of an alien face. Tall, slender, with large eyes and skin that glowed faintly. This was Verith, the High Speaker of the Kalathi Council. Are you the ones who answered our call? Verith asked. His voice was soft, musical. The translator turned it into English. We are, Victor replied. I am Captain Victor Hayes of the United Earth Coalition. We received your message. We are here to help. Verith's skin brightened with what might have been hope. Thank you. Thank you. We had almost given up. The swarm is closing in on our homeworld. We have perhaps 3 days before they reach us. Maybe less. We will do everything we can, Victor said. But I need you to understand something. We are not peacekeepers. We are soldiers. What we are about to do will not be clean or pretty. Eroth hesitated. What do you mean? I mean, we are going to kill them. All of them. Every swarm ship, every swarm creature we can find. We do not negotiate with threats like this. We eliminate them. There was a long pause. Verith's glow dimmed slightly. I see. We are a peaceful people, Captain. We do not fully understand such concepts. But we are also desperate. Do what you must. The connection ended. Victor turned to his crew. All ships, battle formation. We engage the swarm in 2 hours. I want every weapon ready, every system at full power. This is what we came here for. The human fleet moved toward Kalath Prime. As they got closer, they encountered the first swarm ships. They were hideous things, like tumors given the power of flight. Organic hulls covered in what looked like chitin or bone. Weapons that were actually organs, firing bolts of acidic material, or streams of smaller organisms. The battle started when a swarm cruiser detected the human fleet and moved to intercept. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of the Vindication. Its surface rippled with movement, and it began launching smaller creatures from openings along its hull. All ships opened fire, Victor ordered. The human fleet unleashed hell. Plasma cannons tore into the swarm cruiser. Missiles with high explosive warheads punched through its hull. Railguns fired tungsten slugs at hypersonic speeds. The cruiser tried to regenerate, tried to heal the damage, but the humans were firing too fast, hitting too hard. Danny Cruz led the fighter squadron straight at the swarm ship. 20 small craft weaving between the defensive fire, dropping bombs directly into the wounds the capital ships had made. The bombs were special, designed by Lisa. They were filled with a chemical compound that interrupted biological processes. Poison, essentially, but targeted specifically at the swarm's biology. The cruiser began to die. Its hull stopped moving. Its weapons fell silent. And then it just drifted, a massive corpse floating in space. Target destroyed, Danny reported. He sounded excited, almost happy. That was almost too easy. Stay sharp, Victor warned. That was just one ship. There are hundreds more. He was right. The swarm responded to the attack with overwhelming force. 30 ships converged on the human fleet. The battle turned into chaos. Human ships and swarm ships tangled together, firing at point-blank range. Fighters dodged between the capital ships, hunting and being hunted. The destroyer hammer took a direct hit from 3 swarm ships at once. Its shields failed. Its hull breached. But instead of surrendering, instead of retreating, its captain did something the swarm had never encountered before. He rammed his dying ship directly into the nearest swarm vessel. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire and debris. Kyle Murphy watched from the Vindication and smiled grimly. "That's how we do it," he muttered. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 8 swarm ships were destroyed. The human fleet had lost 2 ships and had 4 more badly damaged. But they had proven something important. The swarm could be killed. Victor ordered the fleet to pull back and regroup. They needed repairs, and they needed to plan their next move. He also arranged for a meeting with the Kalathi leadership. It was time they understood exactly what kind of help they had asked for. The delegation arrived the next day. Vareth and 3 other council members came aboard the Vindication. They walked through the corridors with wide eyes, looking at the human crew. The humans were so different from the Kalathi. Shorter, stockier, with harder features. And there was something in their eyes, something the Kalathi had never seen in their own people. A readiness for violence. The meeting took place in the main briefing room. Victor, Lisa, Danny, and Kyle were there to represent the humans. The Kalathi sat across from them, looking nervous. "We want to thank you again," Vareth began. "Your actions yesterday saved many lives. The swarm ships that were approaching our homeworld have turned away." "Temporarily," Victor said. "They are regrouping, just like we are. This fight is far from over. Then what is your plan?" Lisa stepped forward and activated the holodisplay. It showed a map of Kalathi space with swarm positions marked in red. "We have analyzed the swarm's behavior. They are not mindless. There is intelligence guiding them. We believe there is a central organism, a queen or hive mind, somewhere directing the entire swarm. If we kill it," Danny added, "the rest of the swarm should collapse." Vareth's glow flickered. "And how do you plan to find this queen?" "We follow the swarm back to its source," Victor said. "But first, we need to deal with the ships in your territory. We are going to clear them out, system by system." Catherine, one of the council members, leaned forward. "How will you do this? The swarm has been destroying our worlds for years. What makes you think you can stop them in weeks?" Lisa pulled up a new display. This one showed various weapons and tactics. "We use methods your people probably have not considered. High-temperature plasma weapons that burn the swarm ships from the inside. Sonic disruptors that interfere with their neural systems. And biological weapons? Biological weapons?" Sareth, another council member, looked horrified. "You mean diseases? Plagues?" "Yes," Lisa said simply. "We have designed several viruses and bacteria that target the swarm's specific biology. They will spread through the swarm ships, killing them faster than they can adapt." The Kalathi were silent. They looked at each other, then back at the humans. Vareth finally spoke. "These methods you describe, they are brutal, horrifying. How can you speak of such things so calmly?" Kyle Murphy, who had been silent until now, let out a short laugh. "Because it works. Look, you seem like nice people, real peaceful and civilized. But that kind of thinking got you here, about to go extinct. The universe is not nice. It is not fair. Sometimes you need monsters to fight monsters." "But we asked for help," Catherine said, his voice rising. "We did not ask for this kind of violence." Victor stood up. "What did you think help meant? You are facing an enemy that wants to consume your entire species. There is no negotiating with that. There is no peaceful solution. There is only survival or extinction. We are offering you survival, but it comes with a price. It means accepting that sometimes good people have to do terrible things." Vareth looked at the human captain for a long moment. Behind Victor, through the viewport, he could see human crew members working. Some were repairing damage from the battle. Others were loading new weapons. All of them moved with purpose, with determination. These creatures had traveled across the galaxy to fight for people they had never met. They had already lost ships, lost lives. The swarm learned fear over the next 3 weeks. It was not an emotion they had known before. For generations, they had been the hunters, the consumers, the unstoppable force. Now they were prey. The human fleet moved through Kalathi space like a surgical knife. Victor divided his forces into 3 groups. Each group targeted a different system where the swarm had established a presence. They hit fast, hit hard, and showed no mercy in the Keleth system. Danny Cruz led a fighter wing against a swarm hatchery on one of the moons. The hatchery was a massive structure, organic and pulsing, where new swarm organisms were being grown. Danny's fighters came in low, skimming the surface. Dropping incendiary bombs every few seconds, the hatchery began to burn. The swarm creatures inside screamed, a sound that came through the radio as static and noise. Danny ignored it. He made another pass, dropping more bombs, making sure nothing survived. By the time his fighters pulled away, the entire moon was on fire. "Target destroyed," Danny reported. His voice was steady, professional. Moving to secondary objective. In another system, Lisa Grant deployed her biological weapons for the first time. Small drones flew into the heart of a swarm fleet, releasing clouds of engineered viruses. The viruses were invisible, odorless, perfect. They spread from ship to ship, carried by the swarm's own biological systems. Within hours, the swarm ships began to die. Their hulls stopped regenerating. Their weapon systems failed. The organisms that made up the ships started breaking down at the cellular level. It was slow and agonizing. The swarm tried to quarantine the infected ships, but the virus spread too fast. By the end of the day, 37 swarm vessels were just floating corpses. Lisa watched the results from the Vindication Science Lab. She should have felt proud. The weapons worked better than expected, but instead, she felt empty. She was killing living things by the millions. Yes, they were monsters. Yes, they would have killed the Kalathi without hesitation, but they were still alive, and now they were dying because of her. Kyle Murphy did not have such doubts. His Marines were fighting on the ground, clearing swarm infestations from Kalathi colony worlds. It was brutal work. The swarm had burrowed into buildings, created nests in the ruins of cities, turned entire landscapes into extensions of themselves. Kyle's team moved through the remains of what had been a Kalathi university. The walls were covered in swarm biomass, pulsing and wet. Things moved in the shadows, swarm organisms waiting to ambush them. But the Marines were ready. They had flamethrowers, plasma rifles, and explosives. They knew how to clear a hostile environment. Private Sophie Banks was with Kyle's unit. She was young, only 22, and this was her first real combat deployment. She was scared, terrified actually. But she kept moving, kept her weapon up, kept doing her job. They found survivors in the basement of the university. 12 Kalathi, mostly students, who had been hiding for weeks. They were thin, dehydrated, traumatized. When they saw the humans, they started crying. Sophie helped them out of the basement while the rest of the team secured the area. One of the Kalathi, a young female, clung to Sophie's arm. "Thank you," she kept saying. "Thank you. Thank you." Sophie did not know what to say. She had just walked through a building where her squad mates had burned everything alive. The smell of cooked flesh was still in her nose, and this alien was thanking her after they evacuated the survivors. Kyle's team planted charges throughout the university. They set the timers for 10 minutes and moved to a safe distance. The building exploded in a ball of fire, taking all the swarm biomass with it. "That's another nest cleared," Kyle said. 53 to go in this sector. The Kalathi watched the destruction from their shelters. They saw the humans burn their cities, level their buildings, turn entire districts into ash. They were horrified. But they were also alive, and that was more than they had been a month ago. Vareth visited the surface of the colony, rolled after Kyle's team finished their work. He walked through the charred ruins with Victor at his side. Everything was black. Everything was dead. The swarm was gone, but so was the city. This was one of our greatest centers of learning, Vareth said quietly. 3,000 years of knowledge was stored here. I'm sorry, Victor said, and he meant it. But the swarm had turned it into a nest. We could not save the buildings without risking your people. Vareth nodded slowly. I understand. It is just difficult to accept. We are watching our civilization burn. You can rebuild, Victor replied. After this is over, after the swarm is gone, you can build new cities. Better ones, but only if you survive. That is what matters now. They've walked in silence for a while. Then Vareth stopped and turned to face Victor. Your people have seen this before, have you not? This kind of destruction, this kind of loss. Victor thought about Earth's history. The wars, the weapons. The cities turned to rubble. Yes, he said. We have. Many times. We nearly destroyed ourselves more than once. That is why we know how to do this. We learned the hard way. Does it ever stop hurting? Vareth asked. Watching everything burn? No, Victor said honestly. But you learn to carry it. You remember why you were fighting? You focus on the people you are saving, not the things you are losing. Back in space, the human fleet was preparing for the next phase of the campaign. They had cleared the swarm from 12 systems. But there were still hundreds of swarm ships in Kalathi space, and more were coming from somewhere beyond. Lisa had been working on tracking the swarm's movements. She noticed a pattern. The ships were not random. They moved in organized groups, and they all seemed to be coming from the same general direction. She brought her findings to Victor. There she said, pointing at the star map. All the swarm movements originate from this region. It is outside explored space, about 2 weeks away at maximum slip space speed. That is where the Queen is, Victor said. But most likely, if we want to end this war, we need to go there and kill her. Victor studied the map. The region Lisa indicated was unknown territory. No one had been there before. It would be dangerous, maybe suicidal, but it was the only way to truly win. We'll need to leave some ships here to protect the Kalathi, Victor said. We cannot leave them undefended, agreed. But we need to take enough force to handle whatever is waiting for us. They planned the mission over the next few days. 15 ships would go to find the Swarm Queen. 12 would stay behind to guard Kalathi space. It was a risk, splitting their forces, but there was no other choice. Danny was excited when he heard about the mission. Finally, he said, we get to go after the big boss. This is going to be legendary. Gal was more practical. We will need to take a full marine company. If we find the Queen, someone will have to go in on foot and plant explosives. That will be us. Lisa was already designing the weapons they would need. Bigger bombs. Stronger viruses. Anything that might kill a creature the size of a building. Maybe the size of a city. Sophie volunteered to go on the mission. Kyle tried to talk her out of it. Kid, this is going to be the most dangerous thing we have ever done. You do not have to come. But Sophie was firm. I joined the Marines to make a difference. This is how I do that. I am coming. The Kalathi were informed of the plan. Vareth addressed the human fleet from the council chamber on Calath Prime. His image appeared on every ship's view screen. What you are about to do, he said, is beyond anything we could have imagined. You are going into the unknown to fight an enemy at the heart of its power. Some of you will not return. We know this. And yet you go anyway, for people you met only weeks ago. He paused, his glow brightening with emotion. We called out to the stars in our darkest hour. We asked for salvation. You answered, not with kind words or empty promises, but with action, with sacrifice. If you succeed, it will be because you were willing to do what we could not. Fight, kill, die, if necessary. We do not fully understand your ways. Your violence troubles us. But we are learning that sometimes violence is necessary, that sometimes the only way to protect life is to take it from those who would destroy it. Go now, with our gratitude and our hopes. Find this Queen, end this war, and know that whatever happens, the Kalathi will remember. We will remember that when we prayed for angels, humanity answered. And whether you are angels or demons or something in between, you are our saviors. The transmission ended. Victor stood on the bridge of the Vindication, feeling the weight of those words. Saviors. That was a heavy burden. But it was one he and his crew were willing to carry. All ships, this is Captain Hayes, he said over the fleet-wide channel. We have our orders. In 12 hours we jump to the unknown region. We find the Swarm Queen, and we kill her. This ends when she is dead. Until then, we fight. Stay sharp, stay ready, and watch each other's backs. Hayes out. The crew of the Vindication went to their stations. Danny ran final checks on the fighter squadrons. Lisa loaded the new weapons into the armory. Kyle drilled his Marines one last time, making sure everyone knew the plan. Sophie sat in the Marine barracks, cleaning her rifle. Her hands were steady now. The fear was still there, but she had learned to control it. She thought about the Kalathi students she had saved from the university basement. She thought about their faces when they realized they were safe. That was why she was doing this. Not for glory. Not for adventure. The journey took 14 days. 14 days of traveling through empty space, following the trail of swarm ships back to their source. The human fleet moved in tight formation, every sensor active, every weapon ready. They knew they were heading into danger. They just did not know how much. On the 8th day, they found the first sign that they were close. A debris field. Hundreds of wrecked ships floating in the void. Not swarm ships. These were from different species, different civilizations. Some of the wrecks were centuries old. Others looked recent. Lisa analyzed the debris from the Vindication Science Lab. These ships are from at least 20 different species, she said. The swarm has been doing this for a long time. We are not the first ones to fight them. We are just the first ones to get this far. Victor looked at the images of the wrecked vessels. Some had been torn apart. Others looked like they had been consumed from the inside. How many species do you think the swarm has destroyed? I do not know, Lisa said quietly. Maybe dozens. Maybe hundreds. This is a graveyard, Victor. A graveyard of civilizations? The fleet moved through the debris field carefully. It was like sailing through a cemetery. Every ship they passed represented thousands or millions of lives. People who had fought and lost. People who had been consumed by the swarm. Sophie stood at one of the viewports, staring at the wrecks. Kyle came to stand beside her. Heavy thoughts, kid? He asked. I was just thinking, Sophie said. All these people? They tried to stop the swarm too. They failed. What makes us think we can succeed? Kyle was quiet for a moment. Maybe we won't, he said. Maybe we will end up just like them, floating in space, another warning to the next poor souls who come this way. But we are going to try anyway. That is what humans do. We try, even when the odds say we should not. On the 13th day, they reached the edge of the swarm's home system. What they found there made even the veterans go silent. The system had 6 planets. Every single one was covered in swarm biomass. The planets did not look like planets anymore. They looked like diseased organs, pulsing and growing. The space between the planets was filled with swarm ships. Thousands of them. Maybe tens of thousands. Dear God, Danny whispered from his cockpit. How are we supposed to fight that? Victor stood on the bridge, staring at the tactical display. The numbers were impossible. The human fleet had 15 ships. The swarm had an entire system. This was not a battle. This was suicide. But then Lisa found something. Captain, look at this. The 3rd planet. There is a massive structure on the surface, bigger than anything else in the system. And all the swarm ships are arranged around it, like they are protecting it. Victor zoomed in on the planet. Lisa was right. There was a structure, a hive so large it could be seen from space. And if the swarm was protecting it that heavily, it could only mean one thing. The Queen is there, Victor said. The senior officers gathered in the briefing room. They all knew what they were looking at. An impossible mission. A target they could not possibly reach. And yet, they had come all this way. They could not turn back now. We need a plan, Victor said. Ideas. Danny spoke first. We could try a full frontal assault. Hit them with everything we have and push through to the planet. We would lose every ship before we got halfway there, Lisa said. The numbers are too great. Kyle leaned back in his chair. What if we do not try to fight all of them? What if we create a distraction? Victor looked at him. Go on, the swarm is protecting the queen, right? That is their priority. So we give them a bigger threat to worry about. We split the fleet. Most of the ships attack one side of the system, make a lot of noise, draw the swarm's attention. Meanwhile, a small team slips through on the other side and lands on the planet. A small team would not survive long on the surface, Lisa said. The entire planet is covered in swarm. Then we make sure the team is equipped for it, Kyle replied. Heavy armor. The best weapons. My Marines can handle it. We get to the hive. We plant the biggest bomb Lisa can build, and we get out.
How Victor thought about it?
The plan was risky. Insane, really. But it was the only option they had. How big a bomb are we talking about? Lisa pulled up some calculations. If we use the ship's reactor from one of our damaged vessels, I can turn it into a weapon. Massive yield. It would destroy the hive and everything within 100 kilometers. Maybe more, and the team planting it. They would need to be far away when it detonates. Very far away. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. The team going to the surface would have maybe a 50% chance of getting off the planet alive. Maybe less. I will lead the team, Kyle said. My Marines. We trained for this kind of mission. Sophie raised her hand. I am going to. Kyle shook his head. Sophie, no. This is too dangerous. You will need every person you can get, Sophie said firmly. I am going. Other Marines volunteered. In the end, they had a team of 30. 30 men and women willing to go down to a planet made of nightmares and try to kill a queen the size of a city. The plan was set. 12 ships would attack the far side of the system. 3 ships, including the Vindication, would slip around and approach the third planet from the opposite direction. The Marine team would take dropships to the surface, fight their way to the hive, plant the bomb, and extract Dot. Simple, except for the part where everything could go wrong. They prepared for 2 days. Lisa built the bomb from the reactor of a damaged destroyer. It took every bit of her engineering skill to turn the reactor into a weapon. When she was done, the device was 10 feet tall and weighed 3 tons. It would take a heavy transport to carry it. Kyle drilled the Marines constantly. They practiced moving in hostile environments. They trained with the heavy weapons. They memorized the route to the hive. Every person needed to know the plan perfectly. Sophie spent her last night before the mission writing a letter home. She told her family she loved them. She told them she was doing something important. She did not tell them she would probably die doing it. On the morning of the attack, Victor addressed the fleet one last time. His face appeared on every view screen, in every ship, in every room. This is it, he said. This is what we came here to do. We are going to kill the Swarm Queen and end this war. Some of us will not survive. That is the reality. But what we are doing here matters. The Kalathi will survive because of us. Humanity will be remembered because of us. And maybe, just maybe, we will save this galaxy from something that has been killing species for centuries. He paused, looking at the camera. I am proud to serve with all of you. It has been an honor. Now, let us go finish this. All ships, begin the attack. The 12 assault ships jumped into the system and immediately opened fire. They went straight at the largest concentration of swarm vessels, guns blazing. The swarm responded instantly. Thousands of ships turned to face the threat, while the battle raged on one side of the system. Victor took the Vindication and 2 other ships around the other side. They flew dark, all systems on minimum power, trying to stay hidden. It almost worked. A swarm patrol detected them when they were halfway to the third planet. 6 ships moved to intercept. Victor had no choice. They had to fight. The battle was short and vicious. The human ships destroyed 4 swarm vessels, but one of the human ships took critical damage. Its engines failed. It started drifting. This is Captain Briggs, came the voice over the comm. We are dead in the water. You need to keep going. We can tow you, Victor said. No time? The swarm is sending more ships. Get to that planet. Kill that queen. That is an order, Hayes. Victor clenched his fists. Understood. Godspeed, Briggs? Captain Briggs used his dying ship as a weapon. He rammed it into the last 2 swarm vessels, destroying them all in a massive explosion. The sacrifice bought Victor the time he needed. The Vindication and the remaining ship made it to the planet. Kyle's Marines loaded into the dropships. They wore heavy armor, the kind designed for extreme environments. They carried enough weapons to fight a small war, and they carried the bomb secured in the lead transport. Sophie strapped herself into her seat. Her hands were shaking, but she forced them to be still. Around her, the other Marines were quiet. Everyone knew what they were facing. The dropships launched. They entered the planet's atmosphere, and immediately the swarm knew they were there. Organisms swarmed toward them. Flying creatures that looked like twisted birds or bats. The dropship guns fired constantly, cutting them down. One dropship was hit. It spiraled out of control and crashed into the biomass covering the planet's surface. There were no survivors. The other dropships made it down. They landed a mile from the hive. The Marines poured out, weapons ready. What they saw made Sophie's stomach turn. The entire planet was alive. The ground beneath their feet pulsed. The air smelled like rotting meat. Everywhere they looked, there were swarm organisms. Small ones, big ones, things that had no name or description. Move out, Kyle ordered. We have 2 hours to get to the hive. Plant the bomb and extract. Stay tight. Watch your sectors. And do not stop moving. The Marines began their march. The swarm came at them from every direction. The fighting was constant. Sophie fired her rifle until the barrel glowed hot. She saw Marines fall. She saw things that would haunt her dreams forever, but they kept moving. 1 step at a time, 1 meter at a time, toward the hive. The hive opened, not like a door, but like a wound. The biomass peeled back, revealing a passage into darkness. And from that darkness came the Queen's Guardians. They were massive, each one the size of a tank. Their armor was thick, their claws were long, and they moved fast. Too fast. The Marines opened fire, but the rounds bounced off the creature's hide. These were not the normal swarm organisms. These were designed to kill. Heavy weapons, Kyle shouted. Bring them down. The Marines with rocket launchers fired. The explosions tore into the Guardians, but they kept coming. One Guardian reached the Marine line and swept its claw through 3 soldiers. They died instantly. Another Guardian crashed into the bomb transport, trying to destroy it. Sophie ran forward with a plasma charge. She jumped onto the Guardian's back and jammed the charge into a gap in its armor. She leaped off just before it exploded. The creature fell, but 2 more took its place. We cannot hold them, one of the Marines yelled. There are too many. Kyle made a decision. Get the bomb inside the hive. I will buy you time. Kyle, no, Sophie said. We need you. You need time more, Kyle replied. He grabbed the biggest gun they had, a heavy plasma cannon that needed 2 people to carry. He lifted it alone. Get that bomb to the Queen? That is an order. Turned and walked toward the Guardians. He fired the cannon, the plasma cutting through the creatures like paper. He was roaring, a sound of pure rage and defiance. The Guardians turned toward him, away from the bomb. Sophie wanted to help him, wanted to stay, but she knew the mission was more important. She helped the other Marines push the bomb transport into the hive. They moved into the darkness, leaving Kyle behind. The inside of the hive was worse than the outside. The walls were made of flesh. They could hear the Queen's heartbeat, a massive thudding sound that shook the ground. The air was thick and hot. Things moved in the shadows, watching them. They followed the passage deeper. It sloped down, taking them into the heart of the structure. Marines fell to traps, to ambushes, to organisms that dropped from the ceiling. But the rest kept going. Outside, Kyle was still fighting. His armor was cracked. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds. But he did not stop. He could not stop. Every second he gave them was a second closer to completing the mission. A guardian's claw finally caught him. It tore through his armor and into his chest. Kyle fell to his knees. He looked at the creature and smiled through bloody teeth. "Not bad," he said, "but I have seen worse." He triggered the last grenade on his belt. The explosion killed him and the guardian together. Deep in the hive, the remaining Marines reached a massive chamber. And there she was. The queen? She was enormous. Her body filled the chamber, a mountain of flesh and chitin. She had dozens of eyes, all focused on the humans. She had claws that could crush buildings. And she was old, so old. They could feel her intelligence, her malice, her hunger. The queen spoke. Not with words, but with thoughts pushed into their minds. "Foolish creatures. You come to my home. You dare to challenge me. I have consumed 1,000 worlds. I have destroyed civilizations older than your species. What are you but meat?" Sophie stepped forward. Her voice was small in the vast chamber, but it was steady. "We are human, and we do not give up." The Marines set up the bomb. Lisa had designed it with a 10-minute timer. Once activated, nothing could stop it. But they had to survive those 10 minutes and get out. One of the Marines activated the bomb. The timer began counting down. 9 minutes and 50 seconds. The queen screamed. It was a sound that felt like knives in their brains. The hive came alive. Organisms poured into the chamber from every opening. The Marines formed a defensive circle around the bomb and fired. Above them, in space, the battle was reaching its end. The human assault fleet had destroyed over 1,000 swarm ships. But only 4 human vessels remained, and they were all damaged. Danny Cruz was one of the last pilots still flying. His fighter was held together with hope and luck. "Victor, this is Danny," he said over the comm. "We cannot hold much longer." "Did the ground team succeed?" "Unknown," Victor replied from the Vindication. "We have lost contact with them, and we keep fighting until we know." Danny turned his battered fighter toward another group of swarm ships and kept firing in the hive chamber. The Marines were dying. There were too many organisms. Too many claws and teeth and weapons. Sophie was down to her last magazine. The Marine next to her fell. Then another thing, the timer showed 3 minutes. "We need to go," one of the Marines said. "Now, or we will not make it out." Sophie looked at the bomb, then at the queen. The creature was still alive, still commanding her swarm, still trying to destroy the device that would kill her. "We go together," Sophie said. "No one gets left behind." She knew it was a lie. Half the team was already dead. The rest were wounded. And they were deep inside the hive, with only 3 minutes to reach the surface. 2 minutes, they ran. Up the passage, through the flesh corridors, over the bodies of fallen Marines. The swarm chased them, but the organisms seemed confused now, disorganized. The Queen's control was weakening as she focused on the bomb. 1 minute they burst out of the hive into the open air. The dropships were waiting, engines hot. Sophie and 4 other Marines made it aboard. That was all. 5 survivors from a team of 30. The dropship lifted off just as the timer hit 0. The bomb detonated. The hive exploded from within. The Queen died in an instant, vaporized by the blast. The explosion spread outward, destroying everything for kilometers. The biomass covering the planet began to burn. In space, something changed. The swarm ships stopped moving. They just drifted, lifeless. Without the Queen's guidance, they were nothing. Just empty vessels. Danny could not believe it. They stopped. The swarm ships just stopped. Victor watched the tactical display. All across the system, swarm ships were going dark. The hive mind was dead. Without the Queen, the swarm was finished. "All ships cease fire," Victor ordered. "Target the remaining swarm vessels and destroy them, but take your time. They are not fighting back anymore." The human fleet moved through the system, methodically destroying every swarm ship they found. It took hours, but they were thorough. When they were done, the swarm was extinct. Sophie sat in the dropship as it docked with the Vindication. She was covered in blood and burns. She was the only officer left from the ground team. Kyle was gone. So many were gone. But they had done it. They had killed the Queen. Lisa met her at the airlock. The engineer looked exhausted. "You did it," Lisa said. "The swarm is dead. All of them." Sophie nodded slowly. She wanted to feel victorious. She wanted to feel proud. But mostly she just felt tired. The human fleet regrouped. They had started with 27 ships. Now they had 11. Thousands of crew members were dead. But the mission was complete. Victor sent a message back to Caliph Prime. Mission accomplished. The Swarm Queen is dead. The threat is eliminated. We are coming home. When the human fleet returned to Colthi space 2 weeks later, they found something unexpected. The Calathi had built a monument. It stood in the center of their capital city, visible from orbit. It was a massive structure made of crystal and metal, reaching toward the sky. The human officers were invited to the dedication ceremony. Vareth met them at the base of the monument. His skin glowed brightly with emotion. "We wanted to honor those who saved us," Vareth said. "Every human who died fighting for our survival is remembered here. Their names are carved into this monument. They will never be forgotten." Sophie looked up at the structure. She saw names. Hundreds of names. Kyle Murphy was there. Captain Briggs was there. All the Marines who had died in the hive were there. At the top of the monument was an inscription in both Calathi and English. Victor read it aloud. They prayed for angels. Humanity answered with demons, and in doing so, showed that sometimes demons are exactly what angels should be. Vareth turned to the human officers. "You told us you were not angels. You were right. Angels would have been too gentle, too merciful. We needed warriors. We needed people willing to do terrible things to protect the innocent. We needed you." The ceremony lasted for hours. The Calathi spoke about the humans who had saved them. They told stories of bravery and sacrifice. They cried for people they had barely known, but who had died for them anyway. When it was over, Sophie stood alone at the monument. She traced Kyle's name with her finger. She remembered his last stand, how he had bought them the time they needed. Danny came to stand beside her. He had scars now, burns from his final battle. He would have liked this, Danny said. Kyle always said he wanted to be remembered. "We all wanted to come home," Sophie replied. "He just did not get to. Oh. But he made sure you did. Made sure the mission succeeded? That counts for something." Sophie nodded. "It counts for everything." The human fleet prepared to leave. They had been away from Earth for months. It was time to go home. The Calathi lined the streets of their cities, watching the humans depart. They waved. They cheered. They cried. Vareth gave a final speech as the humans boarded their ships. "You came when we called. You fought when we could not. You bled for people you did not know. Humanity has shown us something we did not understand before. That goodness is not the same as gentleness. That protection sometimes requires violence. That angels and demons are not as different as we thought.